Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. I've got a gun on the table that we've had a few people ask us for. It's the Glock 22, which is chambered in 40 Smith & Wesson, Gen 5. This is really, there's a couple variants of this. There's this one here that you see, and there's also an MOS version that has the optics plate up here that allows you to put an optic on it. What you're finding is pretty much all of the guns that Glock makes, they're starting to come out with optics ready versions of it. As you can see, it has front and rear serrations. They're the standard Glock serrations, which actually work quite well. And there are no finger grooves. So it's got a smooth front strap, and it has the same interchangeable back straps that are available on all Gen 4 or newer Glocks. So I'm going to pick the critter up and show you what we've got. We'll start with, of course, we have an empty unloaded Glock. So this is basically a Glock 17 chambered in 40 Smith & Wesson from a physical perspective. It's a duty pistol. It's meant to be a duty gun. It's a full-size gun. So you can carry this. You could even concealed carry it. It's about the size of a typical 1911, but it holds a lot more rounds than a 1911. But it's not the smallest thing they've got. Now they do actually make bigger ones. There's a Glock 24 that's a long slide that's actually bigger than the Glock 40, but this is your standard duty pistol. In days a little bit further past, this is what you might see in the holster of most police that you would encounter. They've kind of moved on and they're doing different things now, and 40's starting to kind of move away from the law enforcement popularity that it once enjoyed. They come with 15 round magazines. They're the same physical dimensions as the 17 round 9mm magazines, but they hold 15 because the cartridge is a little bigger. And the Gen 5 mags have a orange follower with the caliber stamped in it. But this will work fine with Gen 4 mags. There are no cutouts or anything in here that will prevent a Gen 4 mag, if you turn it the right direction, from seating and working. So if you've got other prior generations, it'll even work with Gen 3 and earlier, as long as you don't reverse the magazine catch, which you can do. And one thing you'll note, it has an ambi slide stop slide release, which is something that was kind of introduced with the Gen 5s. It's on both sides, and it's real flush with a little bit of a lip around it to keep you from snagging it unintentionally. And as I mentioned, you can reverse the magazine catch. The back straps that come with it, it comes with regular back straps that just extend this, make this a little bit thicker. And they also come with the beaver tail ones that started coming out with some of the late Generation 4s, and they've continued into the Gen 5s. And they extend the beaver tail out just a little bit behind it for those people that are prone to getting slide bit by the slide. If you've got puffy hands that kind of come up, that extended beaver tail grip will kind of help deal with that. What I've found with this is I'm not overall a fan of 40 in general. I kind of prefer 10mm if I'm going to be going in that territory. But this gun actually handles recoil quite well. It really mitigated the kind of the twisty, somewhat unpleasant recoil that's typically associated with 40, and it was quite comfortable. We had some Perfecta, used to be able to buy at Walmart, those days are gone, but that Perfecta ran flawlessly in this. And then I got my hands on some subsonic 40, which kind of defeats the purpose of 40, but I bought it because that's what was there, and it ran that flawlessly. Interestingly enough, at that point it felt more like a 9mm. I found it really easy to pull tight groups with it, so it's an easy to shoot well. A little bit slower to shoot because it does tend to twist just enough to take it a little bit longer to get back on target. Now what I did notice with this is it fits my hand perfectly and stayed right in my hand. It didn't move. I didn't have any problem keeping it in place. Hammer's hands are a little bit bigger. He would prefer the other back strap. What he found with it is it moved just enough for this backstrap material to start to chafe right here. So for somebody that has slightly larger hands, with the slightly flippier recoil of this, you may find that it moves around a little bit if the backstrap isn't the right one for your hand. The good news is it comes with them. So you can easily customize this to fit your hand, or find that middle ground if more than one person's going to use it. So maybe you want the large, they want no backstrap, which is basically a short frame, the equivalent of like a Gen 3 short frame. Maybe the medium backstrap will get it done. Sights, yeah, they're just the regular U-Dot Glock sights. There are night sights available, but there's also an aftermarket rife with sights for them. So any sight that'll fit any other Glock will fit these. So you can go tritium fiber optic, regular night fiber or regular fiber optic, regular night sights, whatever it is that suits you. I tend to be able to shoot very well with these U-dot sights. I can see them, I can zone them in, and everything is kind of works well with them. From a safety perspective, it's got all the same safeties any other Glock has. So you have the little trigger toggle for inertial drop safety. You have the internal striker block pin, which when I get the slide off it, I'll show you that. And there's also mechanisms in the actual fire control group that inhibit the striker from moving until the trigger bar moves out of the way. So you've got the multiple redundant safeties you find in any Glock. And yes, there's a rail. It's a single slot rail. One thing I noticed on this is the slot's a little further back. A lot of them tend to have the slot right up here. The slot's a little further back on the 22. But again, the aftermarket has long since dealt with Glock and their single slot rails. So pretty much doesn't matter what it is you want to hang on this thing. Most of them have interchangeable plates that you can turn around, so if the slot's at the front or the nose is shorter, it'll fit, and then you turn it the other way if you've got a longer nose or a moved slot. So finding accessories to put on this thing is not going to be a problem. One other thing, I think I might have mentioned it, but maybe you didn't just in case. Gen 5, no finger grooves. So they've gone back and forth. The earlier generations didn't have finger grooves, and they put in finger grooves because people were complaining that they squeezed out of their hands. Then they introduced this RTF texture. It's kind of a little bit grippier texture. And then they've removed the finger grooves. So I don't know, Gen 6 will have finger grooves again, who knows. But either way, whichever it is you like, that's available to you. Talk about a few of the techie things on it. It has the NDLC finish. It's a really nice looking black that does seem to be proving to be fairly durable, that has come out on the Gen 5s. It is 7.95 inches front to rear. Again, it's not a small gun, not intended to be. And it's 5.51 inches top to bottom with a empty mag or a flush mag. And it's 1.34 inches thick. So really not any different than any of the other double stack Glocks that are out there. The trigger on it is a typical Glock trigger. It's about 5.5 pounds. A little bit of take up. Then you're on a very defined wall. Crisp break. Reasonable reset. And you're right on the wall. And then a crisp break. So overall, it's got a nice trigger if you like a wall. I do. I tend to like having a bit of a wall because I can pre-stage the trigger and ride the reset relatively easily. Other triggers that have either no wall or a very short wall might be more appropriate. And again, the aftermarket is wide open. If you don't like the trigger that comes with it, there's lots of variations to tune the trigger to exactly what you do like. Disassembly on this is, one other thing I'll mention before I move on. MSRP on these is around $600. Right now, it's hard to find them at that price. So I ended up paying $800 for this. In normal days, you can usually get Glocks pretty close to MSRP. You never see them advertised below. They kind of really enforce MAP, the minimum advertised pricing. But you can often sometimes find them below MSRP when they are available. Disassembly on this is just like any other Glock. Kind of grab it and close your hands a little bit. Pull down on these two tabs. This particular one, the tabs are a little harder to pull, and you bring the slide forward. And I'm going to note something unique that I just discovered, and it's a characteristic of all the Gen 5s, this little cutout right here by my thumb. If you pull the slide forward, it'll just come off. And that's kind of unique. All the other Glocks, you actually have to go all the way forward, which you still can. I mean, you can still go all the way forward with this. And I've got other Gen 5s, and I just noticed it with this one because it did it when I was taking it apart. So if you're used to just going all the way forward and you'll be fine. I must have stopped for some reason, and then the two parts came apart in my hand. So I had to inspect it to make sure nothing was broken, and it's this cutout that exists on the Gen 5s. I don't know if that was intentional. I don't know if the cutout has another purpose and that's a side effect. I'm not going to consider it a defect. If the slide's this far forward in normal operation that the slide would come off, it's not your first problem and it's not your only problem. In normal operation, the slide's going to be here and it's only going to go back. So I don't see that as a problem, a malfunction, or a defect. It's just interesting. So I'll set that slide aside. The internals of this, if you look at a Glock, anything in any of the later generations, they all look about the same. A robust locking block, Steel guides at the front, steel guides at the rear. There's your fire control mechanism. The only thing you'll notice is that you got your slide stop slide release has two arms. And if you look at the arms, they're thick, robust arms, which means they're going to work. Both of them are going to work. Some of the guns that had come out with this concept have a real thin arm on this side, and what you'll end up finding is one works and the other doesn't. On the Glocks, with that thick arm and solid material, it's going to work. The rest of this in here is typical Glock, everything you're used to seeing, other than the fact that it's a single pin. You know, they had gone to 2 pins in late Gen 3s and Gen 4s. Then now they're back to a single pin. Overall, I don't know if that makes a big difference now. In the past, it was for stability up through here, but they've, you know, the materials are better, the machining is better, they've learned things, so I don't see any reason why that single pin's not going to be as durable. Now for the slide. The slide's very similar to what you're used to in Glocks. Of course, with the Gen 5s, you've got this oblong striker block as opposed to the round one. It's kind of a ramp. It's supposed to make it a little easier for the pin to drive up onto it, or the protrusion to drive up onto it. The Glock Gen 5 triggers are just a hair smoother than an unmodified Gen 4. And you've got your typical dual recoil spring. Pop that guy out of there. And now I've got the Glock Marksman Barrel. So let me get my light, see where I've got it buried here. And it's that hybrid. So it's polygonal rifling with conventional rifling in between it. And that's what Glock is calling their Marksman Barrel. It's supposed to improve overall physical accuracy while retaining the advantages, the pressure advantages of polygonal. Seems to work. I haven't noticed that this is any more or less accurate than any others. And it is doing the same thing that I found other Gen 5s are doing. You're starting to get shadows on the barrel from cycling. Of course, you're going to normally oil the barrel, so it's not like you've got a rust potential there. But I've noticed the Gen 5s do that, and the earlier gens tend not to. That's another one. There's nothing there, like if I run my finger across, I don't feel it. It's just the finish wears at those points. And like the other Glocks, it has what I tend to like to call as a machine polished ramp. It's smooth, but you can see that there's a texture to it. So it was kind of one pass through with the machining, and then the surface treatment goes over it. This has eaten, as I mentioned earlier in the video, everything that I wanted to feed it. So the Glock feed ramps tend to work well. They tend to be reliable. They tend to be smooth enough to not hang up on the bullet or the casing. So overall, they do tend to work. And of course, you just saw me put the recoil spring in. It's relatively easy. And because old habits die hard, I'm going to bring it up and line it up at the beginning. But you theoretically could kind of line it up in the center like that, and you're back in business. So Glocks are easy to live with. If you like Glocks, and you know they're easy to maintain. This particular one, as I noted, this is a little tighter than some others. If you have problems with these, there's little clips, little plastic polymer clips you can buy to grab them and pull them down to make it easier. I've got some Glocks that they're really easy to catch and some that they're a little bit stiff. Most of them, after they've been disassembled a few times and they've been cycled a few times, they all end up being about the same. So I wouldn't necessarily worry about that because, again, it's just like any other Glock out there. Overall, I found it easy to shoot well, comfortable to shoot, a little bit more flip than a 9mm, but that's to be expected. So if 40 is your thing and you want some of the newer features, such as the front and rear slide serrations, the NDLC coating, which actually does look nicer than the intermediate coating from when they went away from Tenifer, you know, the old frying pan finish. Then they went to that intermediate one, which tend to always look dry, tended to look worn out, but they held up well. Back to this NDLC, which kind of somewhat mimics the frying pan finish. If you want some of the upgrades and 40 is your thing, this would be a good choice, especially if you're looking for a duty size, full size gun. And as far as a range toy, this is a perfect range toy. One other thing I just almost forgot to mention, as I did mention, it comes with 15 round magazines. Like any Glock, it'll use the larger magazines. So there's a 16 round accomplished with a Glock extender. I think there's also a +2 extender you might be able to get. And there's a 22 round that's available. I don't see people making as many drums and things like that for for this. You know, they tend to make those for 9mm, and because this is newer than a Gen 3, so Gen 4 and Gen 5s tend to come with 3 magazines, so you get 3 magazines in the box. You're pretty much good to go right out of the box. So I think it would be a good choice if a full-size 40 is what you're looking for. Beyond that, if you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell up there to be notified if you do. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, Instagram, kind of everywhere. Thank you.